How about now? There we are. All right, good. Michael let me know this morning that he smashed one of his fingers in the door today, and so he did that with one less digit, so thank you. Good stuff. So glad you're here today. Did want to say one more thing, just an announcement kind of thing, that Dar did mention this, but Monday, Thursday's this Thursday, and we invite you for a different kind of experience. I'm going to be tag teaming with Angie on some things, and she found an interesting approach to Monday, Thursday that we're going to lean into a little bit, so it'll be cool. I think you're going to like it. So anyway, 6 o'clock. It's a little earlier than normal. That's on purpose because we intend for you to eat a little bit more than normal for this special service on Thursday. And, my daughter's coming into town just briefly, and so I'll get to this in a second. Hold on a second. So I let her know that we've got a Monday, Thursday service, and my wife, in all of her good humor, said, yeah, and Indy loves a good Monday, Thursday service. That's our grand dog. And so it turns out, my daughter sent this back, my grand dog does love a Monday, Thursday service. So she dared me to use it in service, and there I did it. All right. So today is Palm Sunday, and this is a day when we recognize the beginning of the last week of Jesus' life. And there are some things about this year that just struck me that I wanted to lean into a little bit this year. So I'm going to take us through the text and then talk about what this week really looked like for him, just in terms of what happened. Like, have you ever gotten to the end of a week and you're like, oh, that was a week, right? Because of all that you went through. This was a week for Jesus. So this is how it all starts. This is from the Message version in the Bible. Matthew 21. Interestingly, just to let you know, all four Gospels tell this story. That's telling. The first three Gospels are very much related. They borrowed from their own sources, but the Gospel of John, kind of on its own, a couple decades later it was written, and has some differences, partly because of time. But all of the Gospels also slow down, starting with Palm Sunday. It's like chariots of fire, everything's going at a normal pace, but as soon as you hear the music cue, it's like, slow down. And that's what's happening here, because all the authors want us to pay attention, to sit with the moments and the movements of this week. So when they neared Jerusalem, having arrived at Bethphage and Mount Olives, Jesus sent 2 disciples with these instructions. Go over to the village across from you. You'll find a donkey tethered there, her colt with her. Untie her and bring them to me. If anyone asks you what you're doing, say, the master needs them. He will send them with you. This is the full story of what was sketched earlier by the prophet. And this is a reference to the prophet Zechariah in the Older Testament. Tell Zion's daughter, look, your king's on his way. So referencing a king, poised and ready, mounted on a donkey, on a colt, full of a pack animal. So I want to stop there for a second and just point out that Matthew, once again, is quoting Scripture. And Matthew, more than any other gospel writer, does this. Matthew is speaking primarily to a Jewish Christian audience and wants to tie the Older Testament to what's unfolding in Jesus' life. So you see this kind of stuff. That's where we get some of the Christmas narratives too. He quotes the Older Testament for that. And why is he doing that? Because he wants to draw a connection between what has happened and what is happening in the moment. That's a part of a historical narrative that's been unfolding for some time. So the disciples went and did exactly what Jesus told them to do. They led the donkey and colt out, laid some of their clothes on them, and Jesus mounted. Nearly all the people in the crowd threw their garments down on the road, giving him a royal welcome. So this is like rolling out the red carpet for Jesus. Others cut branches from the trees and threw them down as a welcome mat. Also another thing for like the entrance of a king is what they're trying to connote here. Crowds went ahead and crowds followed, all of them calling out, Hosanna to David's son, blessed is he who comes in God's name. Hosanna in highest heaven. Now I want to take a pause real briefly here. I got an email, because I subscribe to her, from Diana Butler Bass this morning. And she was talking about this scene and remembering a time when she highlighted that there were 2 from 2 different scholars, John Dominic Crossan and Marcus Borg, that talk about 2 parades that were happening on this day. One, the one we just read and we're talking about, but another one across town coming in a different entrance to Jerusalem. And that would have been Pilate coming in. He was the royal official. And he would have been coming in with a very different look. People may have been shouting Hosanna to him as well, by the way, because it was common for people in the Roman Empire to use words and acts of worship toward the emperor and his dignitaries because they demanded it. Some of the Caesars demanded to be called Lord and God, Domitian being one of them, who reigned around the time that the Gospel of John and Revelation were written. Call me Lord and God. Can you imagine? Can you imagine a political leader that would want to be treated like a god? I don't know if we can imagine such a thing. But anyway, so there were probably crowds shouting Hosanna as a praise to this one, to keep in good favor with this one. But Diana Butler Bass recognizes that there's also another way to translate Hosanna, which is quite literally, which means God save us, or just save us. And so in this parade, as Jesus is coming in, it's not a praise to God that they're singing. It's a call for help. God save us. And God save us from what? God save us from this empire that's killing us. God save us from the pain and suffering we've been enduring for so long under this tyranny. And some of them were probably thinking not just the tyranny of the Roman Empire, but also the Jewish leadership. It's not an anti-Semitic thing to say that the Jewish leadership at that time was corrupt, while the Jewish people suffered under their poor leadership. God save us. And why are they looking to Jesus? Well, his very name, Yeshua, Joshua, Jesus, all the same name, means God saves. This one brings the saving. And they're recognizing that as he comes. And all of his renown, all the things that he's done to build up to this moment, they're singing, God help us, God help us. And so this is happening. And then as he made his entrance into Jerusalem, the whole city was shaken. Unnerved, the people were asking, what's going on here? Who is this? Why would they be asking that? Well, that's revealed in the next line. The parade crowd, so a different crowd, answered, well, this is the prophet Jesus, the one from Nazareth in Galilee, which was a day or two journey to the north. Remember, Jesus was from the northern lands. He hung out around the Sea of Galilee. That's where he did his life for the most part. He would come to Jerusalem for different festivals and stuff, but for the most part, people wouldn't know who he was, the city folk down there. So it's the people that knew him who were there for that parade. They're the ones who are pointing out, well, this is the guy that we've been following, and he's amazing, and I can't wait for you to see what he's going to do, kind of a thing. Sometimes we think that Jesus had this world renown, but Facebook hadn't been invented yet, right? So there was no way to know who he was in a distant part of the world. And I wonder what he felt like that day as he's heading into this experience, hearing all these people cheer for him. He was very intentional about how he came in, which I'll point out here. I have these different images for you, but you have this first one in the upper left-hand corner of this donkey. And if you've never heard this before, I say this every year, but to review, Pilate on the other side of town, he's coming in on a horse. He's coming in on a war horse. He's coming in on one of the finest horses, fastest, toughest, meanest horses you've ever seen, because he wants to communicate, I'm a tough guy. He's riding in on a Hummer, if you will, right? He wants to know I mean business. I can go anywhere with this thing, and I'm super tough. But meanwhile, Jesus, he makes a different choice, because he's not coming in as a warrior, is he? He's coming in as a peacemaker. So what's he going to drive into town? A Toyota Prius. That's what he's going to drive. Toyota Prius. I used to drive a Prius, and no, not knocking the Prius. I loved my Prius. However, it's known for gas mileage, not for beating anybody off the line, right? It is not a sports car. It is not a tough car. It's a very economical car, and that's why people buy them. Nobody is threatened by anybody in a Prius, I don't think. Am I right, Jessica, who drives a Prius? That's right. So here we have Jesus coming in on a Prius, on a donkey, to make the statement as clear as possible, because there are certainly people in that crowd, because there was apocalyptic fever at that time. They were looking for messiahs everywhere, and there were many people claiming to be the Messiah before and after Jesus, okay? And so they're wanting for Jesus to be the Messiah they want him to be, which is take charge, blow this thing out, be the one. And so even with the ride he's coming in on, he's saying, that's not what I'm here to do. That's not what I'm about. I'm going to help bring some saving here, but not in the way that you think. I'm not wanting to communicate or telegraph to anybody that I'm here to make war. That's not who I am. Well, of course, palms are represented there. One thing I didn't have a photo of, which I could have put in here, I'm not exactly sure how this would look, but it had to do with money. Because in the very next scene, after he gets into the city, he goes toward the temple, and he sees these money changers there. And Jesus got ticked off. In Hebrew, if you look for the word that describes it, it actually says pissed off. I'm not sure that's true, but I think it is. He was furious, absolutely furious at what he saw. Why? Well, because he knew what it was like to come from the northern lands, where you had to save up a lot of money to make this big trek, to make it all the way down, 2 days' journey to get to the festival. And he had friends with him who were dirt poor like he was. They're scrapping everything together because they're going to Disneyland, right? This is the Mecca. And they're looking forward to this moment. And they get toward the temple, and then they realize, and they knew it was coming, so they knew to be prepared, but they weren't quite sure how prepared they needed to be. They found out that their money was no good in the temple. They had to exchange it for temple money. And the temple had the right to put their own exchange rate on it. And oftentimes, it was really good for the people in the temple and really bad for the poor people who just wanted to go and do their religious thing. So Jesus is seeing the exchange rate of the day, and he's like, enough. And that's when he starts flipping tables. And that ticked off all the rich people who were making money off this scam, right? You know who made happy? All the poor people. This was a nonviolent act of resistance and disruption, and everybody got into Disneyland free that day, for at least that moment, as everybody's scrambling around to try to get their money scurried back up. He's ticked off. I wonder if there was any part of him that wanted to go further. I wonder in his anger, was there any part of him that maybe wanted to go across the line into something a little bit more violent? I bet there were people there who wanted him to. Maybe people who were there, who were hoping he'd be that kind of Messiah, thought this was it. This is how he's going to start the riot, because his crowd's right here with him. All right, go for it, Jesus. Go take that guy out. Say one of those cool prayers you're known for and take out a whole bunch of them right now. Let's see the show, right? I wonder if he was tempted to do something like that. A couple days later, we show up at Mandate Thursday, where he tells us to remember to do two things. One is do this bread and cup thing as a remembrance of his body and his blood, and be in community together, remembering the story, remembering what happened when we experienced and wondered about what's it look like when the divine becomes flesh in all of us. How does that work? But then also, remember this was a festival and there were lots of people in town. It was spring break for them. And so none of the people, the disciples or his closest followers who were in this large upper room, they couldn't book a foot washer. And I'm kind of serious. They probably were in high demand. And nobody wanted to do the foot washing business, because that's like going over, to a truck stop and offering to clean out their toilets with your own toothbrush kind of a thing. I mean, it is about, thank you for those looks on your faces. I appreciate that. It's like one of the nastiest things you could possibly imagine doing. Everybody in that day and age wore Birkenstocks. That's why I wear them. It's what Jesus wore. And so everywhere they're going, their feet are getting dusty, and dirty with all the stuff that is in those, caked up streets of Jerusalem. And we all know the donkeys and the camels are walking around all the time, and they have terrible sewage issues there. So all of that stuff's getting in between your toenails and toes. That's the stuff that all the people brought with them to that upper room. And nobody wants to touch that. So Jesus does. It's remarkable. And I wonder in that moment, was there a little bit of a Martha moment for him? You remember that story of Martha and Mary? And Martha was getting ticked at Mary because she was wanting to hang out and listen to Jesus, and she was busy cleaning up after dinner. And Jesus kind of, the dishes can wait. Mary's got it right. Let's be together in this moment. Dishes can happen later. Did he have any inclination at that point to be a Martha type? To be bossy? bossy pants and just kind of chew out the disciples, because certainly he could have. I mean, he's thinking that this is going to be the last season of his life. He doesn't know exactly how it's going to go down, but he's feeling like this is the final show. We're coming right into the lion's den here, and this is probably not going to go well. This is maybe the last banquet type experience I'm going to have with you. I'm the guest of honor, for Pete's sake. And what is happening here? You're making me do this. Was there any part of him that just wanted to guilt trip them a little bit? Was he tempted in any way? And then, of course, the next day is just an absolute dumpster fire horror show where he's, put into an illegal trial. 3 different groups of people all condemning him, beat beyond recognition, forced to carry his own cross where he's going to be executed. And because he's so exhausted from all that he went through, he didn't live long. He was gone before sundown. I wonder, in any of that grief and sorrow, was he tempted to just give up hope altogether? And then, I don't want to spoil anything for you, but then Easter Sunday came, and it turns out that there's a happy ending to this story. If you haven't heard it before, good news, the grave thing didn't stick quite like everybody thought, and the disciples and others experienced a different kind of expression of this Jesus that they knew, called a resurrected Jesus, which is quite interesting and mysterious all at the same time. I wonder, at that moment, would he have been tempted in that expression to kind of, I don't know, told you so kind of a thing, or gloat, or maybe he would really go all Thanos and feel all powerful, and then maybe he's going to want to squash everybody. What kind of influences were with him? These are the questions I'm weighing this week as he went through this. How was his person affected, and how was he different in all of these circumstances? Because when I look through this week and see what's going on, he pretty much stayed Jesus the whole way through. I know the temptations had to be there in different ways and different levels, and many more than I've mentioned. But I wonder, especially in those times of anger, I wonder if he was tempted to just go too far and not be his true self. And that brings me to you, because we all have these moments, right? Where we're in these circumstances where we kind of lose it a little bit. We're off center. And I mean more than just being responsive versus reactionary. It's always good to take a beat and think, all right, how do I want to respond to this so I'm just not reacting? But something deeper than that. Have you ever had a moment where you've lost it, lost your temper? This is my question for you. When is this you? Incredible Hulk, right? Poor Bruce Banner, shot himself with something that when he got too angry, he became this guy, right? And he wouldn't even know. He'd literally lose his mind, and he's tearing stuff up and beating things to a pulp, and then all of a sudden he wakes up somewhere, and most of his clothes are off. Somehow he must have had stretchy pants, because his pants always stayed on. But anyway, he comes out of his stupor not knowing what destruction he did, but he certainly did some. I wonder if you have ever been guilty of turning into the Incredible Hulk. Yes? Yes? Just be honest. Very good, of course. Now, maybe you don't resonate with the Incredible Hulk so much. Maybe you're like one of these characters. So we have the Hulk, but we have some others as well. We have Simon Cowell here. You remember him from American Idol? He was the guy that would shoot straight and usually be rude when he did it. So he's the Martha times 10, right? I'm just going to call it like I see it. I don't care what you think about what I say or me. That's me. Have you ever been in jerk mode is what I'm saying, where that's just how you're approaching it. Maybe that's what you go into when you're not yourself based on the circumstance. Or maybe you're like Ron Burgundy from the Anchorman. I don't know if you ever saw that movie, but basically he's this guy that is so full of himself. He has an ego the size of Texas, but doesn't have a brain to match that size. And he's a broadcaster and thinks that he's brilliant, but he's just not. One of the great lines in the movie is he's trying to humble brag, and he's just saying to somebody, "I'm Ron Burgundy. I'm kind of a big deal," kind of a thing. I wonder, when we are in the company of those who are propping us up, are we tempted to go into Ron Burgundy mode? forget our humanity, forget our flaws, believe our own press, right? And have such an inflated ego that we're also in that moment not really in our true selves. And then there's this other character. This is from a cartoon strip called The Timid Man, which ran in the 1920s and 30s. You remember it, don't you? But you probably remember the main character's, at least last name. His character's name was Casper Milquetoast. Milquetoast. And the milquetoast was a reference to a food you would eat when you would have a nervous stomach. Maybe that was acid reflux in the day or whatever. And the reason you would eat milk toast, which is exactly what it sounds like, milk on toast, which means it's this soggy kind of a sweet thing, is because it wouldn't hurt your stomach. And the idea here is to be a milk toast means that you're just not going to be offensive in any way at all. That's Casper Milquetoast. I'm just going to play it safe. I don't have a backbone. I'm Casper Milquetoast. One of the captions that I saw, or cartoons I saw as I was looking more into this guy, it shows him walking on a sidewalk next to some grass, and on the grass is his hat that just blew off his head like 4 feet away. And right next to his hat is this sign that says, "Keep off the grass." And so he's struggling. What do I do? And he's got all this, and he decides, because this is what Casper Milquetoast would do, he says to himself, well, I was really wanting to buy a new hat anyway, so off the store I go. Doesn't want to offend the owner of the house by taking 1 footstep into the grass. That's Casper Milquetoast. And they cover all kinds of areas. So I'm wondering, which one of these, if the Incredible Hulk wasn't you, when do these characters show up? When are you these characters? Because I bet, depending on the circumstance, I bet at least 1 might be you. Maybe even 2. Heaven forbid 3 or 4. But that would be the human experience, wouldn't it? So what I'm wondering is I'm recognizing that Jesus, he was a full human being for sure. But I marvel, at least what we see, and he had the full range, and he expressed the full range of emotions. So don't hear me in any way saying, hey, let's disregard our emotions or stuff them and all that stuff. That's not it. In fact, a couple chapters after we just read, Jesus is uncorked. You want to see what mad Jesus looks like? Read that. I think we see him step a little bit over the line, honestly, because he is ripping apart the Jewish leadership in Matthew 23. He is furious. I mean, it is as colorful a commentary as you're going to see a guy say without swearing too much, right? I mean, he is just going for it. And we see him weep, right? In the Gospel of John, we see him excited and angry and loving and all these things. So it's all the emotions, and yet it seemed to me like Jesus still stayed pretty centered, who his true self was, with all of the human experience. He didn't get off the bubble. And I wonder if that's possible for us. And I think, according to the Gospel of Luke, this is something that happened in his life intentionally. The earliest part of Luke, before they really get into his story, Luke says this, that Jesus grew in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and all the people. I would like you to say this verse out loud. Sorry, the contrast isn't quite as good as I wished. Let's say it together. Jesus grew in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and all the people. This is a remarkable thing for Luke to say about Jesus. This is so full of whopper words. The first one that's a whopper is the second word. Jesus grew. He grew. He didn't just come out of Mary's birth canal and all of a sudden he's got all the wisdom and maturity in the world. He was a real human being, and he grew into something. He didn't just age either. We all age. As much as we might try to fight it and pretend to others that we're not aging at all, the fact is we all age. But not everybody becomes more wise, do they? There is a difference between age and maturity. And Jesus became more mature even as he aged. That's the wisdom piece. He grew in stature as a person. He became a bigger person, so to speak, and he had favor with God and all the people. What a remarkable thing to say about Jesus. And so I wonder today, what were the things that allowed him to maintain this, to live in this full, true self life, this walking around in touch with this divine within and allowing it to flow its way out in countless ways? What was involved with that? Because I think it had something to do with developing this muscle memory in his life. I think it had a lot to do with his habits. Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit." James Clear wrote the book Atomic Habits, which is an excellent book. He said, "Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become." And Dallas Willard, who was a great Christian thinker who died some years ago, said, "You are the unchosen sum of your habits." Now, I want to be careful not to say that what I'm teaching here is a how-to sermon, because that kind of gets off the mark, and we are a how-to culture. We're like, give me the 5 steps to, become the real deal, and that's what I want to do. I want to avoid that kind of thinking because that gets off the mark entirely. And yet at the same time, there are things that were part of Jesus' rhythm in his life that were powerful and helped shape his reality. And this is not rocket science, right? By the way, the life that you have right now, whatever's going on in your life, is exactly as you should expect, based on your habits. We get exactly what we live. I am the result of all of the habits, like it or not. But the wonderful news is, it doesn't have to stay that way. I have agency, and so do you. What are the things that we might want to consider embracing in our life that we might tap into this flow more and more, getting in rhythm? And that rhythm matters. Yesterday, I was really honored to speak at the No Kings event, and it was a great event, very positive and joyous. That's kind of how they frame it. As the event was happening and as people were drawing there, they did a genius thing. They invited Crosswalk's own John Hannaford and his cosmic drummers to play. And so for 30 minutes, they just kept the beat and really cool rhythms. And you know what that did? Not only did it add energy to what was happening, it got everybody tapping their foot. It got literally everybody in the same rhythm. It's a powerful thing. The powerful thing, this music thing. I don't know if you knew that, Michael, but this music thing, pretty powerful. Can really bring people together. Well, what I'm inviting you to think about as we look at just a handful of things, these are rhythms. These are ways to get more in step and things to incorporate into our lives that I think worked for Jesus. They were part of his becoming who he was, because we were all in the making. So these are some of those maturity makers that I think were there to consider. I think he was really intentional about his personal rhythms of prayer and meditation to lead off. I think we know from the stories that we have, this is a guy who knew that he was going to have a busy day, a full day, and so he made it a longer day by waking up early so he could break away and be on his own, just to be still, to meditate, to dial in, to be present to the presence. All of these things to start his day. And after a long, hard day, he'd get back and he'd break away to retool, to reset, to get grounded all over again. And he also had genuine everyday relationships. And I mean everyday relationships. This wasn't, he was kind of a star of his own, and he didn't just hang out with the in crowd, the cool kids. He wanted to hang out with everybody. And it's very telling that the people that he chose to be in his inner posse were not the people with all the letters after their names. It was not the star crowd. They were just regular people. Now, a lot of them were fishermen, right? That also meant that pretty good chance he was going to have dinner every night, which that was a bonus. But they were salty, salty people, not the brainiacs of the world. And he loved them. I mean, he really loved them. He did real community with them. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing to emulate. So far, just some questions for you. How is there any regular rhythm for you to just break away, to be still, to meditate? Is there any rhythm in you, in your life, where you're making room for real relationships, where you know people, and more importantly, you are known by somebody? Because I think Jesus was known. And then, of course, he incorporated his faith practices on a corporate level. In our vernacular, he showed up to church very regularly. And again, this is not to tick off a box so that God can say, all right, Jesus is still in the good column, but because this part of the rhythm of coming together, to singing together, to learning together, just to being together in the same space, it does something for us. It fosters something in us. It's an important part of his rhythm, and he definitely leaned into that. The community engagement part, one way to look at Palm Sunday is their own No Kings rally, quite literally. They were ready to dump their own Caesar, and this was their No Kings rally. Nonviolent, celebratory, all the way through. So there's got to be a better way, and we're hoping the way of Jesus is that way. Jesus was known for just simply telling the truth, which is what the word prophet really refers to. Being a prophet does not mean you've got some crystal ball where you can get the lottery numbers or know how the Giants are going to do in the next series, but it is simply looking at reality and telling truth. And Jesus was a truth teller all the way through. Frankly, that's what got him killed, as he told the truth so clearly that the people who were condemned by that truth knew it. But that's a part of our thing. Are we willing to just simply say, yeah, that's a problem. This thing sucks, and this needs to change. Do we have the guts just to say it? It's hard to say. You'll notice that there's a picture missing on our wall of witnesses over here. These are all social changers who've done things. They're not all Christian. They're from all kinds of walks of life and all different causes. But there's one that's missing, and the one that's missing is Cesar Chavez, because of what we learned about Cesar Chavez that was yet unknown. The truth has its own consequences, and it's not very pleasant when these things come out. But do people who are diehard labor supporters, do they cower? Do they become Casper Milquetoast at that point and say, well, let's just give them a free pass? No, it's with great sorrow that those who supported him so strongly and were behind the campaigns to name schools and streets and whatnot after him had to say, that behavior does not represent the movement. And I want to suggest to all of us, and particularly our entire United States, where we are pushed into our corners politically by design, by what the media has become, to separate us. Do we, in our respective camps, do we have the courage to simply tell the truth and say what we are seeing, that is not what we want? That does not reflect shalom, does not reflect Jesus. Do we have the courage to just say the truth out loud? It's not easy when you're in mixed company, is it? And yet, it's part of what made Jesus Jesus. And I'll tell you, as one who's done this in different ways for a long time here at Crosswalk, not that I've got it figured out, but the first few times when I started to speak about LGBTQ equity and inclusion, it was with fear and trembling, because I wasn't sure how it was going to land. Now, I have no problem talking about that anywhere and everywhere. You know why? It's because I've done it a lot. Dar Valencia, when she first came on staff and we started having her do announcements, she shook like a leaf inside, because she doesn't, and still doesn't, like to be on stage and talk. Now, I think you'd agree with me, she feels very comfortable on stage. Right? Why? Because she's done it again and again and again. Truth-telling is difficult, but it gets easier the more you do it, because it becomes a part of your rhythm. And I think the first few times Jesus laid it out there, just a very quick aside, remember his first sermon to his hometown crowd, he tells the truth, and they didn't want to hear it. And what do? They wanted to run him off of a cliff. Now, for a lot of people, they'd see that and they'd be like, I am not telling truth anymore. I am not going to condemn, these people anymore. And yet, he did it again and again and again. It became easier and easier. But the price was still going to catch up with him. But the price was worth it. Because the vision was shalom for all. And he was going to stay in shalom all the way through. Just a couple other things. Jesus served indiscriminately to anybody right where they were. And it didn't matter where they were from, didn't matter what language they spoke, didn't matter what their nationality was, their religion was, anything at all, he served them. And he got in big trouble for it. The religious people thought he was really breaking some rules. But he didn't care, because there was something of value in the exchange of serving, that he would get to know people and experience things differently because he was that close to them. All of these things work together, are part of a thoughtfully engaged life. And my question for you, and again, this is not so much a how-to. You can be Jesus too if you just do these few things. But it's just to consider, knowing that our habits are the things that create our character, create who we are. If we are truly made in the image of God and the Spirit of God resides within us and we're swimming in this, and we have all been formed and shaped by all these different forces in our life that may not reflect who we can be and who we are at our core. Your unique masterpiece of spirit and flesh, all of you. What does it look like for you to lean into and live into your truest self? I think Jesus' life was built to enhance that, to question that, to wonder that, to develop that, to mature that. And these are the rhythms that he incorporated. Is there anything in there that might help you? Which is my final question. I don't have a fancy conclusion to this, but I'm wondering, how are you shaping who you're becoming? Because you are. You already are. How are you shaping who you are becoming? If you're, hey, I'll be the first to tell you, you're beautiful people, every single one of you. You're wonderful. I love every single one of you here today. If you just keep on this same trajectory, I'm going to love you just as much no matter what. And God will too, right? But maybe there's some things that you haven't told me that you think maybe might change that, because there are some things in your life that you wish you were more shalomy in every circumstance, which is not devoid of emotion, but just stays on the bubble. And so you have that moment. You have that opportunity to decide. Is where I am right now, how I'm experiencing life right now, is that how I want it to continue for the long haul? Because you have the agency to grow in stature and in favor with God and others. Not that that was Jesus' goal. I think he was just incredibly curious and profoundly moved by this love of God. And he couldn't help it. How are you going to not help it too? Does that make sense? All right. Let's pray together, then we can be on our way. Take a deep breath. I threw a lot at you today. I pray that you didn't feel any judgment or talking down to or anything like that. But I hope you hear the possibility that is showcased in Jesus' very life. And I hope there was a moment of honesty about the 4 characters. Like maybe there are parts of us that were like, yeah, that's right. When I get into this particular situation, man, I'm just not myself. And maybe there's a way that can help that. That you might be your shalomi expression wherever you go. Not perfection. We're all going to miss it here and there. But movement, growth, depth, maturity. Spirit of God, remind us that we are in you at all times. We're swimming in your presence. You are life within us. You are life. We are intertwined with you. May we be ever responsive to how you're wooing and nudging us forward. May it be so for each and every one of us. I ask this in the name of Jesus. We follow. Amen. And because of your finger, Michael, let's just call it a day. All right? Thanks for being here, everybody. We'll see you Thursday, I hope.